This is Stephanie Abrams and jetset411, continuing a conversation we started with Tiki Windsor, who is with her daughter, I wanted to say Kelly Betsy.
Betsy Kelly will do.
Betsy Kelly. I don't know why I got her name backwards. Betsy Kelly, who's just a delight.
Thank you.
And the family is carrying on a tradition started by Tiki's father when he purchased this wonderful piece of property with a mansion on it and named it Eastover Resort, and has done so many interesting things. Aside from it being 600 acres, it backs up on October Mountain State Park, which is how many acres?
Tens of thousands. It's the largest state park in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And
it is, as you describe it, the place you have to be in October at 6 p.m.
It is awesome in the true sense of the word. As it gets dark around the resort and the sun hits the mountain, it's spectacularly beautiful.
We have the wonderful fall foliage, and the mountain seems ablaze.
It is.
Yes, I know. You commissioned me to come over and stand there at exactly the right moment, but truly, all year long, it is a wonderland because it's just a gorgeous piece of property. And aside from things like the indoor pool and the outdoor pool and archery and tennis and all those things that people would want to do, you have a historic site that rivals something you might see in the Smithsonian, in that your father had a great interest in the Civil War.
That he did. And he started to collect Civil War memorabilia when it was a case of one person's junk being another's treasure. And about 1961, he decided he needed to construct a building to house this collection. And so the textile mills in a town, Abrams, Massachusetts, just north of us, was being torn down. He took the remnants of the building and created a museum.
Oh, when you say the remnants of the building?
The remnants of this textile mill, the
columns. Bricks?
Columns, wide beam floors, beams, bricks, the whole bit. And created this museum out of somebody else's junk, and had friends who worked for the Smithsonian make these displays. And the displays tell much of the history of the Civil War. Included in the displays, I am very proud to say, there are several cannon. And these cannon we take starting, it has to be 35, 40 years ago, started taking them to Tanglewood, where the Boston Symphony plays in the summer. And when the Boston Symphony does the 1812 overture, we fire our cannon. So that's something of which we're quite proud.
You know, for those of you who are watching and may not be familiar with Tanglewood, it's the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. It partly lies in Stockbridge and partly in Lenox. And I know, but you know, but to be fair, part of the property is in Stockbridge, and it's just, how far from you?
3 miles.
3 miles. It's just down the road. And at Tanglewood on Parade, which is an all-day event, starting, the gates open usually about 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon, and there are musical events all over the lawns. And in the evening, there's generally a prelude at 6 p.m., and then the evening concert begins at 8 or 8:30, but I think usually around 8. And by tradition, the last piece performed is Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, which he wrote for cannon to blast off a cannonball and go boom at a part near the end of that piece. And normally when you see it performed, you're indoors somewhere, and so they clash cymbals because they can't fire a cannon indoors. But I've always rejoiced watching the conductor turn to cue the cannon to fire at the appropriate moments. And I love the story you tell about how your dad referred to himself as a member of the orchestra.
Yes, he was. He considered himself a member of the orchestra, and my sister and I were quick to say that our dad played first cannon with the Boston Symphony.
Well, I've met the fellow, Ed Baker, who plays first bass, you know, very tall.
Yes.
And I know the first violinist, but, you know, knowing that someone was first cannon, that's very cool. Now, you talked about the memorabilia And I understand it is the largest private collection.
It's arguably so. We've been told that it is.
Why don't you explain what's in it? It's not just a lot of paper and documents.
No, not at all. There are the cannon, as I said. There is a Gatling gun. We own one of the few functioning Gatling guns. There's uniforms and displays.
Both north and south.
Both north and south. Displays of the Harper's Weekly magazines, that are framed, which were the communication in those days of the war that was going on. We have hundreds of them. A lot of prints that were made during that time, sketches and so forth. Let's
go back to the uniforms for a moment, because I wouldn't want people to envision these are things hanging on hangers.
No, they're placed on mannequins, and each mannequin has been developed into characters of the Civil War. Some famous, like Robert E. Lee or Grant or
some
whatever.
Some infamous.
And some infamous, yes. John Wilkes Booth is there, and President and Mrs. Lincoln. There's a display of that horrendous evening at the Ford Theater.
And you've actually got it set up, so it looks like they are sitting
in their booth in the theater, yes. Yes.
Quite extraordinary.
We have horse-drawn fire engines. An old
Minus
steamer.
the horses.
Minus the horses. Although they're taken out periodically for parades and displayed in parades. It would take weeks to digest the entire collection, I think.
Well, also when you walk down the stairs to approach, you've got something special.
From the main building, my dad built a tunnel that connects the main building to our indoor swimming pool. And in that hallway, there are hundreds of pictures, sketches, paintings, Harper's Weekly, framed documents, in addition to many of the awards and so forth, and pictures, history of Eastover as well, as a resort.
I spent about 40 minutes just walking down your stairway one day, because I really wanted to take the time. It's very easy to run past them and just glance as you go. The first time I came to visit the Heritage Room, as you call it, I didn't have the time to really pay attention. I could glance as I went, but not really to pursue it in a way that it deserved. And the next time, I really spent the time, and I spent about 40 minutes, and I only did one side.
That's true.
I just looked at one side walking down the stairs. To go back now and do the other side.
Well, you please do. Please do. But it's the museum, the tunnel as we refer to it, and all are just some of the things that make Eastover Resort unique.
The other thing that I remember you're sharing with me is that your dad actually got a fellow who worked for at the time the Smithsonian, and he came and did the mannequins and actually did something special to memorialize it for himself.
Yes, he created one of the mannequins in his own image, and one of the characters, and it was on the southern side, so it's rather unique. Yes,
I really appreciated that. I mean, that's kind of there are people that paint something and paint their own image somewhere in it, in the flowers, or in some of the very busy work, or like Alfred Hitchcock planting himself in a scene in every one of his films. It was really neat to see that this fellow had done one of the mannequins to look like himself.
He did his own signature.
Right. I think that's really, really special. Yeah, it's quite incredible. Now you've got something else quite historic on the property that's 4-footed.
Yes, we do. We have one of the first herds of American bison east of the Mississippi River. We've had them for 40-plus years.
Another dad thing.
Another dad thing, yes. And we take our guests down in safari wagons into the pasture where the bison are, when they're being fed, so the guests can visit them up close and personal.
What overcame him to do that?
Well, he knew that the buffalo, American bison, were an endangered species, and our government had put them on reserves out west. When the herds grew to a particular size, the government, in its wisdom, decided that they would auction them off to pre-approved individuals. My dad
And
read that.
every family needs a bison.
Absolutely. My dad read that, went through the government, was approved, hopped in his trailer, drove out to Oklahoma, and bought 2 or 3 of them. The next year he went back and bought a couple of more. And that was the basis of our herd.
What is the care and feeding of a bison like?
Relatively simple. They've got smiles on their faces this week because our grass has turned green, and they love their green grass. But also they eat cracked corn and hay. In the fall, if people stop by and feed them apples or pumpkin, they're very happy
like
with
pumpkin.
that. Yes, they do. Yes,
And
they
how
do.
do you keep them separated so that they don't decide to go take a swim in your outdoor pool?
We have pastures fenced in. They have gotten out on occasion, which is like a rodeo. But the
That has
cracked
to
corn,
be something.
the cracked corn will lure them back in to the pasture.
So
But
they're fairly docile, are they?
They're quite active, and I would want to stay on the opposite side of the fence from them.
Yeah.
They're not tame.
Well, not having had a lot of experience with bison, I was driving from, where did I fly into? Oklahoma City to Bentonville, Arkansas. No, Tulsa, Oklahoma to Bentonville, Arkansas, about a 90-mile drive. And I saw these very hairy cows in the field. And it took me some time to figure out those aren't hairy cows at all. Those are bison. Thank you so much. This is Stephanie Abrams saying a special thank you to Tiki Windsor for joining us today at jetset411. And I hope you come back next time. We'll be talking about Ireland and Mykonos. Got to fly now.